right here. Okay. All right, so we have our two little jars. Let's go ahead and do that one. Remember, this is the part that has it's still a little sticky. If you put your hand over it and you feel that it's sticky, then it's sticky. If you want to speed this drying process up, by all means, hit it with that heat tool. A few seconds out of it until until it no longer feels sticky. It'll feel nice and sleek, you know, once you get it done. You don't necessarily have to use matte medium to glue down, you know, your pieces. But you can use any kind of glue that you have or that you would like. But it is definitely a good idea to seal, especially if you plan on, you know, adding some kind of shading or anything to any of the design on or around it. Then you definitely want to go ahead and seal that off with some matte medium. So I'm just going to seal this off. And just making sure that my area around it has enough matte medium surface covered, I'm sorry, has enough matte medium on the surface that it's covered nicely. So when I go ahead and apply some shading to this, and I'll just show you the difference from what this looks like now to once we transform it all, what it'll look like. And I'm going to use the lighter side, even though the back side is oh so cute. But I'm going to use the lighter side just so that you guys can see a little bit better of what it is. How it looks. And just how dimensional things can become just with a little bit of shading here and or there. Now you can also shade with your alcohol markers. You can shade with alcohol markers. The issue with the alcohol markers is that they can have a reaction to matte medium and or water and or alcohol. So that's the only thing. You kind of take a gamble when it comes to applying the matte, when it comes to shading over surfaces that do not have matte medium and with alcohol markers and or other markers. I do apologize for being tongue-tied. So I'm sealing this whole thing up. I'm gonna allow that to dry. And I'm removing all of that excess glue off of my brush because you do not want to be wasting this kind of glue. And again, cleaning off my brush. Cleaning off my brush right away. Because this does dry very quickly, if you do not clean off that brush right away and you allow it to sit, you will never ever be able to recover your brush after that. It will turn into a spatula. And I say that from experience, you guys. I've turned many of brushes into spatulas in the past. And let me just go ahead again and spray some alcohol just so that I make sure that I remove any other residue off of there. And allow my brush to kind of sit. So while these things are drying, I'm going to go ahead and just show you what it looks like without, right? What you can and cannot do. So let's get a nice vibrant marker, and I'm going to show you Let's get this darker blue here. I'm going to show you in the India as well as in the alcohol um, what will happen. Let's get something that is vibrant. And I'll use that alcohol. Now, again, these are a cheaper alternative. These are, they're double-ended. They have a nib on one side and they have a bullet tip on the other. And I bought this for a pack of about 80 for like less than 40 bucks for 80 markers. And I have two different brands. And so far they've been holding up well. The only issue with these is that they're not refillable unless, you know, you spend the time and energy to actually color match your markers to other brands charts in order to purchase the refills and you know, give them more life. So if that's something that you're willing to do, then by all means I'll go right ahead. Other than that, I mean, for 40 bucks 80 markers, when they're gone, they're gone. I mean, you don't have to worry so much about it, especially if you're not at the level of let's say expertise, but they do function just as well as the other ones. They are very good alternative, and you can find these on either one of your online stores that deal with purchasing things overseas. Although I did get these from the US because sometimes you can find them that they have warehouses here, and I got these right away from the US. Alright, so I'm going to show you here, and I'm just going to create a box. And these are brush tips, so you get many different strokes from here. So you can rub that just a little bit. You get a little bit of movement. As you see, I removed some of the paper because making the paper wet, obviously you're going to get some pulp if you rub it out. Let's get some alcohol. I'm going to allow that to keep drying. And it's just, and I'm going to say FC on this one. AL on this one. I've had these since last year. As you can see, they're still very juicy. If you have markers, store them flat so that the ink is not running more towards one side than the other, and there's an even distribution of it all. As you can see with this one, it didn't even move a bit, and this is the alcohol one. So let's say you didn't have any matte medium on your surface, like this has no matte medium. If you was gonna go dry, rub this out around an image, you would get no shading. You would just get that solid line, that solid outline, and you won't be able to blend that out for a softer look. The India ink had a little bit of give, just a little bit, but overall it stayed very solid. Let's apply some alcohol to that. The India ink had no bleeding at all when you sprayed it with the alcohol, but the alcohol marker obviously was going to be reactive to the alcohol. Let's do the same with some water. That's just regular water. So again, the India ink does provide a little bit more. The ink, it has more, it does provide a little bit better, you know, it removes some of the color somewhat. But at the end of the day, you really do not get much shading. The blocked area itself stays pretty much the same. Again, with the alcohol marker, same deal. It didn't really do much movement when it came to the pigment of the pen itself, the marker itself. So you pretty much still get that rough, solid outline. this surface is now clean, I mean dry. No more sticky stuff, right? So let's now demonstrate how it is on the surface with the matte medium. So first thing I'm going to do is write with matte, right? And we have our first box. This is going to be Faber-Castell. And I'm going to do this one, and then we're going to do the other box, which is with alcohol. I might as well just color that in. So as long as you kind of go into this, and you get, as you can see, you get a little bit, but you don't really get too much. But you do get a little bit with the India ink once you put that in there. As long as you do it quickly, you can see that you definitely, as long as you do it fast, because that's another thing, you do have to work fast, because again, once it's dry, it's gone, and it does dry rather quickly. The alcohol ink did not give me much of a spread, but it did give me a little shading. So if you apply a little bit at a time and shade, then you'll get a little bit of shading on that. With the Faber-Castell, you'll see that it spreads out a lot better, and as opposed to this side, which, you know, it didn't do much. Now let's apply some alcohol over that. Let's just make sure that that is no longer going to keep moving. I'm going to spread that out. Now we're going to apply some alcohol over that. And I'm going to actually apply it right onto my surface, and then just pick it up from there with a brush so that I can get a little bit more of a control area here. So as you can see, the alcohol marker is still reacting very, very highly to that alcohol, and that's because it is on a porous surface. It did not do that when I did it here with the alcohol. That with alcohol was pretty much solid. This with alcohol, different ballgame. Now let's do the same thing to the Faber-Castell side. I'm going to get a little bit of clean alcohol here, and let's just see. I've never actually ran this test before with the alcohol side. You'll get a lot more movement. So I guess it does react. I've never done this test before with the alcohol. So this is a fun thing to learn. You actually get to move the whole thing around almost like watercolor. Now let's see what it does when you apply matte medium over it. Let's see if that's really the key to its success, is when you apply matte medium over it. But you see how you can pretty much, you can shade a whole thing. You know, if you thin this out around an image, you'll get a nice shading. So now I know, and that's food for thought now, that if I grab a little, let's say, a little cotton swab, and I just dip it lightly in some alcohol, and I want to get a nice smooth shading, nice little thing to find out. But as you can see, the alcohol doesn't have that. The alcohol does not provide you with that. I was able to turn that India ink almost into a watercolor just with a little bit of alcohol. So that's an awesome tip. So it's actually not a bad thing. It's actually a very good thing. So I'm going to clean that off now. So let's go ahead and do this again. And now let's try. I'm going to close this off. And now let's try with me putting matte medium over it and see what happens. So I'm just going to do my little box here, and I'm going to color the little box in. And let's get this one with the, and let's put some matte medium over that. Let's give it a few seconds to kind of dry. And again, this is FC, and this is AL. This is alcohol. While that goes drying, let's see what happens. Because now that we know that it moves, now we need to see what happens after it's already dry. So let's say you've already done all your doodling and all your shading. Let's see what the ink itself does after you're ready to seal your whole page down. In the meanwhile, let's work on these. So these right here, as you know, have matte medium. And this one here has matte medium. So let's see what that does. So let's go ahead and grab some The test here, not so much as this, because at the end of the day we know. Well, you know what, I'll do a little bit of shading maybe in the bottom with some of the alcohols, just so that you can see the difference between how they work and how they move. So I'm going to try to get something similar. I'm going to try to get some similar colors here. Let's go ahead. I want to use this green, and I'm going to give you guys a tip as far as shading. When you're going to shade, and many of you might already know this, but this is mostly for the ones that do not, try to use a color that's at least a shade or two darker than the actual colors that are on the image itself. So this one, for example, has some yellow and has some green, so I'm going to try to find a green that's a little bit darker than the green that is there, and I'm going to try to find a yellow that's a little bit darker than the yellow that is there. I'm going to do two tones on this one here. And then on this one here, I think I'm just going to go with, I'm going to say this light blue. Or you can use a gray. Or you can use even black. It depends on how dark and how dark your background is. I'm using a white background, so therefore it's a little bit different. But when you're on a darker background, then you actually want to have lighter shading, and that's when your white gel pens and things like that come into play after you've done some shading, so that you can actually bring some of those things into the forefront. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show you more or less how it is that I do this very simply. And where is my, I left my Q-tip there. So you just right. Let's grab some of this yellow and just use a different finger so that you are not blending colors. You can even use a Q-tip and do the same thing with a Q-tip. The Q-tip is going to pick up more of the color, obviously, than your hand is, so it's a little bit lighter, but it still does the job. And then you can go back in if you want it to be a little darker and just apply more. Right? So we have that. I'm going to keep going on this side here. So you have a little bit of time to go in. Now I'm going to go into some of these little things in here, little stars. And you just dab that just to soften it up. Now you just turn something that was a little bit plainer into something that's a little bit more vibrant and stands out a little bit more. And a little really does go a long way when your surface is non-porous, i.e. It has been prepared. And you know what, just for giggles, let's add a little bit of blue shading in here. Yeah. So as you can see, I could squiggle a little bit and be able to spread that out very nicely. Let's get a little bit of green and just blend that out a little bit more. And let's say now we're going to add some highlight. Now all of this is pretty much good to go. This one I don't really like so much. That's why I ordered the other ones, because those for some reason they just don't really do what they say they're going to do. This is a thicker tip, so it is what it is with that for now. Once I get those other ones, like I mentioned in the previous video, I will be reviewing them for you guys in case you're not sure what they are, how they work, so on and so forth. I will go ahead and do that. But as you can see, you can more or less go around the image and just shade it out. Now if this is on a pattern background, what you've just done is brought this to the front again. And you can also use these to color if you wish. So you can go ahead, let's say you've stepped out an image, matte medium, you know, right over that image, let it dry completely. Then you can go into it with these kinds of markers and then blend and shade and do all of those things to color your images in. That's another way of using them as well. Now with this one, I'm going to go ahead and use the alcohol. And then I'm going to pass matte medium over these as well so that we can see what the effects are. So on this one, I'm just going to go on the inside of the jar. And remember, all of these things have been matte mediums. It's just... It actually rips the paper off for some reason. That doesn't work too well, does it? And that's me rubbing it out instantly. That doesn't really do too good. So again, if you do it with an alcohol marker, you're not going to get much blending out of that. Look how well this feathered out compared to how kind of not so good that feathered out. So that's just something to keep in mind. And let's just add a little bit of this here. Just to play around. So that's pretty much how that situation kind of looks. And that's with the matte medium. As you can see, the Faber-Castell ones do blend out, feather out a little bit better. This is why most mixed media artists and art journalers will go for the Pip pens for their shading, specifically for their shading, more often than they will go for alcohol markers when it comes to their shading. And again, you don't need to have a huge variety pack. Just something that has at least a brown in it. Definitely a brown in it. You don't necessarily have to have the variety of colors. You don't have to start, you know, that far into it. You can get yourself something with a brown, definitely at least a black. So I would say at top you will probably need maybe two packs. The pack that brought the brown for me is the landscape pack, which is this one here. But they also have another one that is called Terra. Terra, and that one is mostly you know, it has a lot of different browns, different shades of brown and stuff like that, but you don't really need different shades of brown. With one brown is good. This one brings you the brown, the green, the blue. It brings you two greens, it brings you a brown, it brings you a blue, it brings, let me see, does it say here the colors that are in here? No, this one doesn't say the colors that are in here. But yeah, it brings a brown, it brings purple, I believe. No, not purple. It brings blue, a lighter blue. It brings the green. It brings a gray, I believe, and it brings the brown. And it brings a yellow one that's like a darker kind of yellow. And that's pretty much, I think, what's in this set here. This one brings light ones. These are kind of highlighter type colors. I just bought these to try them out, but I wouldn't necessarily buy this one because the colors are really kind of light. I much rather have the darker ones because, again, I'm not using these so much to color my images as I am more using them for just outlining and creating shading. So I would definitely recommend to get the landscape one. If there's one that you're gonna get this one that has the brown and it has a couple different ones. And if you're into creating your own sentiments and writing them and things of that nature, then I would definitely recommend that you get the Faber-Castell, the black ones, the ones that brings the array. That one brings like 8 in a pack, and it's all black, and it has a chisel tip, a fine tip, a micro fine tip. It has two brushes. It's got a regular size brush and it's got a really small brush. Tips, like it's got a whole bunch of different nibs. And then you could do all different kinds of writing and calligraphy, and you know that your work is going to be more or less permanent. So now that these have dried, let's go ahead and pass a little bit of matte medium in it just to see if we still get movement from them. And I'm just going to apply a little bit. So you won't get movement from either one of them. But again, what would you rather seal? Would you rather seal this one or would you rather seal this one? It's your preference, it's your choice. It depends on what kind of style you're going for. If you like the sketchy kind of style, then definitely do it with an alcohol marker. You'll get more of a sketchier look with that. If you're looking for softer blends, and actually this one is still moving a little bit, I'm able to extend that blue out a little bit more. And not so much with the other one. Alright, you guys, so let's go into now shading this bottom one, and then I will move on to stamping. Yay! I just wanted to give you guys a more in-depth kind of look at how everything kind of goes. If you see, I got blue leaking out of there, which would look nice if you're doing like a puddle or something like that, but you know, if you're trying to create like a water effect or something like that, let's say it's raining and you want to create like a little puddle, that might work for you, but I will tell you to test it out first and see, you know, how it works for you. Not all matte mediums are the same. They're not all made the same, so they might react differently depending on the brand that you're using. Okay, so just keep that in mind as well. They're not going to all react exactly the same. This is the Deco Art brand, and this is the reaction with this brand and these supplies. So now we're gonna do this square here, and with something like this is more or less what I would do. And this color is green gold, and I think it's the closest color that I can get to match that. So I don't know if I outlined, if I gesso, not gesso, if I matte medium the outside. I don't remember. You guys probably would. It doesn't feel like I did. It feels kind of dry. So I don't think I did matte medium the outside of this, at least not all the outside. You can tell because it'll spread easy when it is, and it won't spread at all when it's not. I know I did the inside, so I'm gonna go ahead and just do this just to create dimension in the inside, give it that shading. So now an image that was previously flat and two-dimensional, now when as the brain looks at it, it makes it appear like, oh, there's more sides to this. There's more dimension in this image than, you know, the reality is. The reality is it is a flat 2D image, but because you're applying your shadows now, and I don't know if that color shows too well, so I'm going to go against the color scheme of this, and I'm going to go with a green and see if that helps out. I think that will probably be better, at least for camera's purposes. But again, you can do this. You can surely do this. You can apply any colors that you wish. Depending on how bold, again, you're trying to make it, and depending on your backgrounds and stuff like that, and your preference, you know, your palette, the way that you like to see things, then you can definitely, you know, apply any kinds of colors. Imagination is literally endless, and you can just go with whatever you like. So now, and I do hope that the camera picks this up, because in life I see all the shading and it looks like there's more to it in the background. And you can make this darker if you wish, and just keep adding, and just keep making it darker. Let me see if I can go into it maybe with a black. So let's go into this one here, and let's just get some shading. And another thing that is great about applying your matte medium, if you go into an area that you do not want to be in, let's say you go outside of the lines, it's a lot easier for you as long as the surface is not wet, you know, i.e. meaning that your inks have dried. It's a lot easier. And if you wet your fingers a little bit and then apply it, then you'll get it'll run a lot smoother while it's still wet. So as you can see, while it's still wet, I can go in. My finger's a little wet from when I touched, you know, the baby wipe. Let's go with this one that's dry. I'm just going to. So that's another thing that matte mediums does for you, is that by applying matte medium, it allows you actually to correct certain boo-boos that you create. You know, sometimes you'll be coloring something in and you'll actually go outside of the lines and you don't want that. You're like, oh no, I went outside the lines. Hurry up, grab the baby wipe, whoop, swipe, swipe it through, and you're good to go. You can continue on your journey. So I think that kind of helps out a little bit more to see just the dimension of that as opposed to, uh, everything else. And again, this is all about your taste, your style. You'll develop your own style. You'll notice very quickly that you tend to go for certain colors. You'll notice very quickly that you'll have a certain style and just laying your things out. And the more familiar you become with the products and the things that they do, so on and so forth, then your palette will start expanding. At the beginning, it'll probably feel like it's all over the place, like you don't have a set way of doing things. And that's just because at that point in time, your brain is just trying to process all the information and it's applying it in all different kinds of ways, trying to figure out which is the best way or what feels the most comfortable to you, what becomes your actual style at the end. So yes, have fun, you guys. Don't be too overcritical of your work, because remember, you're learning, you're starting, and it's always okay to turn the page and start anew. If you've tried a technique and it doesn't work for you, then set that to the side. Try again. Try again in smaller amounts or more amounts, and just play around with it. That's what art journaling is. It's your tool to perfect your craft, right? It's your way of trying different things and working through different things so that you are familiar with them, you are aware of how they function, how they do not function, the do's and the don'ts, and all of these things actually start getting programmed into your minds, and before you know it, everything will be so natural that it's just like you can go blind at it. You can close your eyes, literally just extend your hand, grab something, and know exactly what to do and know what the result is going to be after you use it. I am still in an experimental stage. Most of you will still be in an experimental stage even later on, because as we are working with new products and new mediums and we're learning new techniques, that information highway is always expanding. Your brain is always capturing different bits and pieces of information. You're always learning different things, different techniques, and new ways of using old products, which is what is awesome about this. Your ability to use so many different things is kind of endless. So I'm going to put this to the side. And we are going to now go into stamping.